Hello and welcome back to Sharks Happen. Today's episode we're going to go over a terrible injury by a 4-foot shark. It's worse than I thought. I actually was able to find a picture of it this time. I believe I covered this during the freshwater brackish water series I did, so we're going to recover it even though it doesn't go on our regular stats. We're going to go over yet another kiteboarder fatality, and at the end of the show we will go over some seal hunters and the bad luck they ran into. And now we head over to the Intercoastal Waterway, and that is in Florida, and the date is June 1st of 2014. Jessica Vaughan, 22 years old. She is out in the Intercoastal Waterway. She's out doing some tubing, but she said that before she even jumped into the water, she had a bad feeling. She didn't like getting into the water where she couldn't see down below the water. It's not the color of water, I guess, where you could see very deep, and she doesn't like not knowing what's below her. So before she even goes in the water, she's got a bad feeling about getting in the water. She's out there tubing, and she's swimming on her back, doing a back, kind of like back swimming to get back to the tube, and suddenly she says she feels like she got punched in the leg, and then she thought a fish had bitten her until she saw the damage, and she's able to get back to her friends. They get her up on the boat, they get her in, she gets in, and she gets fixed up. They said this was a 4-foot bull shark that got her. Not a shark we'll normally cover, and I think I've already covered this story back when I did the brackish water attacks, but I didn't find this photo of that damage to the front of her leg. I mean, she's got teeth marks in the back of her calf. It's the lower leg, so it surprises me that it's that bad, because there's a bone right in the front of your leg. But you'll be able to take a look. I'm going to link the story in the description so that you can see what a 4-foot bull shark can do to somebody's leg, somebody's lower leg, and it is just gruesome. So if you go ahead and look at it, be warned, this thing is very graphic. I mean, you can almost, when you're looking at the view of the front of it, you can almost see right into, pretty much can see right into her leg. So that's our story of Jessica Vaughan, an attack, not an attempt to predate. They said it was, like I said, a 4-foot bull shark. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit bigger than that. Just by looking at that bite, I wouldn't be surprised. If they told me that was a 5-6 footer, I wouldn't be surprised. So that's our story of Jessica. Now we're going to head over to Passe de Condec, and that is over in New Caledonia. The date, May 21st of 2011. Nathan, 15 years old, he is out doing some kite surfing, and he had been in the water, he'd been on the water a couple hours practicing, and suddenly he fell off of his board. Fell off, and he's in the water. Now the kite, the sail is dragging him across the top of the water, which is bad news. You're being dragged like bait, basically. And he ends up, shortly after that, getting bit in the leg at 11 o'clock in the morning. He's bit in the leg, and his father is on the beach, it sounds like, and he goes into the water and goes and gets him back to the shore. The damage to his leg, they said that it was 2 bites, and that his knee had the worst of the bite, and also severed his femoral artery. So he had gone into hypovolemic shock right away probably before he even hit the beach. And by the time it sounds like they got him in the hospital, he had passed away from his wounds. They thought that this was a juvenile great white shark that did this at first, because there's a lot of great white sharks in that area. But after they looked at the wounds and looked into it, they now believe that it was a tiger shark between 9 and 11 feet that went after him and bit him. We're going to put this down as an attack, not an attempt to predate by a tiger shark. Probably just going after what it sees on top of the water, grabbed its attention, went up there to, they're curious. They're curious with their mouths. When people say, they don't have hands, they're curious. Well, it's not because they don't have hands, it's just tigers are curious about what's floating on the water, and they probably always will be. So that's our attack on Nathan, 15 years old. We don't have last name. Attack, not an attempt to predate. We're going to put it down as 9 to 11 foot tiger shark. Now we're going to head over off of Laguna Road, which is in Davenport, California, and the date is November 5th of 2009. Eric Geiselman, he is 21 years old. He and his brother are doing some surfing. Sounds like Eric was doing a competition earlier, and now him and his brother are doing some recreational surfing, and he gets himself about 50 yards from shore. It's at dusk. So it's getting dark out. He's 50 yards from shore, so I don't think it could be that deep, but I'm not sure. There could be a drop off. And he is laying on his board. It is dusk, and he smacked from underneath on the board, breaking the board in two. There is a video, it sounds like whoever filmed the video, that got their attention, because there's video of him right after the attack holding on to the front end of the board, the front half of the board. The other half of the board's gone, so he doesn't even have his leash. He says the leash was attached, but now I'm just holding on to the front of my board. And I guess there was a complete look of shock on his face, like there would be a mine, and he tosses the board aside and just swims his way into shore. So the shark ends up hitting him. They don't know what size shark this was. You know, over there, I'd think it's definitely a great white of some size to be able to just blast that board in half like that. But no way to tell. I would say a great white, but it wasn't identified. This is one of those unusual ones where nobody ended up seeing the shark during, before, or after the attack. So we'll put this down as an attack, not an attempt to predate, a fatality for the board. No injury to the surfer. We don't know what kind of shark. Okay, now we head over to St. Louis. That is Reunion Island, and the date, July 22nd, 2015. Rondolphe Arrieguy. He is 45 years old. He and friends are at the beach. Two of them, Rondolphe and a friend, Erwin, they are in the water surfing. They're pretty close to shore, it sounds like, and about 25 yards, because a friend on the beach says that he was 25 yards from him. So he can't be any further than 25 yards from shore by what the witness says. So he's out in the water, and suddenly a shark comes up and bites him. Friend Erwin is there, sees what's going on, and I'm sure he starts making his way over there. On the beach, his friend Dr. LeGabriel, I believe his name is, he had witnessed it. He says he was 25 yards away, saw that shark attack him, and against his instincts entered the water and started swimming out to him. He also said that he had known that sharks don't usually come back and attack after they've done something like that. So maybe he means the witnesses, and maybe he means the victim, but either way he's correct in that. So he swims his way out, and then there's a kayaker nearby. And the other surfers form a chain, and they're able to get Rondolphe back onto the shore, where they put a leash from one of their surfboards on as a tourniquet, and they get him in. The damage to his arm, both bites it sounds like were to his arm, and it was just too much damage done by a 7-foot bull shark, and they had to surgically amputate Rondolphe's arm. The Dr. LeGabriel said that when he looked out there, he was 25 yards away on shore. He saw his friend bitten. Against his instinct, he jumped into the water, swimming out there. He says he saw the water, which was crystal clear, they said that day, turn from white to pink to red, and then the shark had swam off. So it sounds like he was pretty close to him as the shark had left, and maybe he's the reason why the shark left. But though, you know, the damage was already done. They get him in. He survives the attack. Rondolphe Arrieguy, an attack, not an attempt to predate, by a 7-foot bull shark. Okay, now we're going to head over to Weissig, and that is at Mozambique, and the date is December 25th of 1973. Christiaan Weissig. He is 41 years old. He and his wife had been out doing some spearfishing. They had been out in the water in about 2 meters deep water. There was a surge of a current that came in there, so they went into the shallows after that, probably worried about getting dragged off or smacked into rocks or something, I would think. So they make their way back to shore. Christian's wife goes into shore, and she gets up on the beach, and he stays out swimming a little bit longer, and at 11:20 he decides he's going to leave the water. So he's standing now. He's about 10 feet from the beach, and he's taking off his gear. He's standing in waist deep water at most, and he's taking off his gear and tossing it on the beach when from behind, he's facing the beach obviously, and he's hit from behind by obviously a shark, and now he has to fight the shark off. His wife comes out there and helps him back into shore, but not before that shark removed his right leg above the knee, and he tried kicking it with his left leg, and I believe it was his heel or his foot ended up getting bitten too. They said that they think this was an 8-foot bull shark that had done this, but they wouldn't rule out that it was a great white. but that it had to be a a pretty big, decent-sized shark. At first they thought it was a ragged-tooth shark, but they can't bite through a grown man's leg like that, not something that small, well, that size. So that's our attack on Christiaan Weissig, an attack, not an attempt to predate. Right now we're going to put it down as an 8-foot bull shark. Okay, now we're going to finish off our unprovoked attacks over at Redhead Beach, which is in New South Wales, Australia. The date, January 18th of 2012. Glen Lenny Folkard, Lenny is his nickname obviously, but Glen Folkard, he is 44 years old. He is one of 500 people at the beach. Scores of people are in the water. He is in the water. He is surfing, and he's about 20 to 25 yards from another large group of surfers, so it sounds like he's isolated himself from other surfers a little bit, which you kind of don't want to do if you have a group of surfers. Kind of stay close enough to where you're not hurting each other, but so that you're at least not a singled out person, like if there's a group of people in the water when a boat goes down, stay in that group. But anyway, he's separated himself from others in this water, and he says suddenly he's hit from the side like a train, and this thing just came and nailed him in the side, has him by his leg at this point, and drags him into the water. Glen, we'll call him Glen. Glen grabs onto his board, and he's able to get himself back up onto his board and scream for help from others. The shark had released him at this time, and now he is paddling his way back in, but he looked back to see where the shark was. He could see about a 20-foot, he said, trail of blood leading back, and just behind the blood trail, a dark shape, large dark shape swimming slowly following that trail. So he paddles his way into the beach, gets in, he ends up going in, needs, I believe it bit him in the leg, and it also, the first bite kind of took part of his hip and got him in the buttocks. But I think it took a little bit of flesh from his hip. So he ends up surviving the attack. This ends up being a 9-foot great white. There are a couple of witnesses. One of them said that his son had actually seen a shark. Maybe not that shark, but I'm thinking probably that shark leap out of the water after a fish. So he probably saw a fish jump, a shark jump, and shortly after that, the attack on Glen, which would make sense. A mad shark that he missed his food, probably a failed attempt at a predation. You wouldn't believe how long these attacks take in that canal back there. You would think, oh, the attack and it's over. No, there's an attack, and then about minutes later there's another 30 seconds of commotion, and then minutes later there's another. And I don't think that's all different fish. I think they're still going after the same fish. It could be different fish, but you know, they're not 100% predations on seals, and I don't think on fish either. These things have ways to get away. So we don't, of course, they got him in. One of the gentlemen said that his son saw the fish jump, but he also saw them bring Glen in and said he was very gray, said he had to have lost a lot of blood. And then another witness had said that he was out, and it sounds like he was in the water. He was one of those, it sounds like, in the large group. And he heard the commotion, he looked over, and he could see the victim getting back up on the board and start paddling, and then the blood trail behind him. I don't know that he said that he saw the shark follow him, but he might have mentioned that he saw the shark following him in too. So the couple different people ended up seeing this. The Green Party over in Australia, after this attack, they called for the removal. This was a netted beach. They called for the removal of nets everywhere in Australia. And we're going to get into these nets real quick on the things that I've seen on it. I've seen that this was the first attack in 3 years on anybody. Somebody lost a hand 3 years prior at a netted beach. I can tell you that there was a string of fatalities ending, I believe, with Margaret Hobbs when they installed those nets, and they have drastically gone down. Fatalities almost don't happen on those. Now, the Green Party wants those removed. They claim they're ineffective. They do not stop the sharks from going in there. And they also make the claim that almost half the sharks that the nets catch are from the beach side. So they're being caught on their way out instead of on their way in. Meaning that, like we see in Malibu Artist and other excellent drone footage, that all these guys are catching the natural thing. They see us all the time. Sharks see us all the time. I've always known that sharks see us when we don't know it, and they leave us alone. I think we're in trouble with whites only pretty much
Number one, when we're on boards, and boards, kayaks, and boats, you don't know when, but they're going to get irritated and they're going to do as they do. And then the other thing is, you know, when they're desperate. So that's the attack on that. The Green Party wanted that removed. Sounds like they told them, no, we're not going to remove this. And I would have to say that I think that shark nets are very effective, let alone stopping fatalities, but they cut down on attacks greatly. Now you're going to lose sharks, and I didn't think about the nets. You know, when people talk about numbers of sharks, I forgot about all the netting going on, let alone you have bycatch, you have fishing. There's quite a few sharks being taken out. I don't think more than what could grow the population. So I think the growth of the population is still up there, but I think because of these nets that I wasn't considering, it's not near as what I was thinking it was, because these nets are probably taken. I'd like to see the numbers on the nets from just individual beaches. That's kind of interesting to me. Just great whites. I want to know how many great whites are taken by these nets per year. Give me a pretty good idea of, you know, how many of these shark attacks that might be stopping. I don't think many. I don't think that it's stopping many fatalities, but I think it's stopping a lot of attacks per se. So I don't think that it's a good idea to remove the nets. If you want to use the water, you better have something there to protect you. In those places, you know, South Africa and Australia, I would not swim without a net myself. I mean, I wouldn't swim with a net. Because they have them staggered along the beach, and they float on the top of the beach, but there's an area to get in there down below. And they're thinking there is that when they're coming in the daytime, in the morning, they're swimming at the top of the water, and when they leave at night, they're going at the bottom of the water. So at the top of the water in the morning, it'll keep them out, and then they can just swim out. But I don't understand that. So, but they are effective, I would think, and I wanted to bring this one up. That's our story, and we will get to the end of the show. Okay, now we're going to finish our show with, you don't hear that every day, back in 1895. William Lloyd, he was on the Emma Louise. It was a ship that goes around, and they were sealers, so they would go around and hunt and kill seals. And the ship ran into bad weather and sank. Now, the men ended up in 3 different boats, and one boat came by and picked up the men in the 2 boats. But the 3rd lifeboat, another ship came by and picked that group up, and that 3rd boat was the boat that William Lloyd was in. I can't find any real description of exactly how it happened, but he ended up in the water, and he ended up devoured by sharks. So William Lloyd ends up getting devoured by sharks when he's out trying to kill himself some seals. I'm going to post. I usually don't do anything with these end of the stories, but like I said, I go through the newspapers and see what I can find. And I'm posting this newspaper link. It doesn't have anything more than I just told you. But if you just read it, it kind of strikes me as funny, because they go through the whole story and how William Lloyd died. And after that, they're telling you how bad luck the fishing was after that. Like you really care what the fishing was after somebody lost their life. So I'll post that little clip there. Down in the description, I'll put in the link of both stores. They're both still open. I do know that I have at least one order from my store here that I got to get out Monday. That'll go out first thing Monday, which is tomorrow. And that's it for the show. Got another couple little stories here. Couple of, somebody had mentioned ice fishing. Somebody brought up ice fishing, and I have a hunting story, and I have another fishing story from the Keys. So we're going to do 3 today. About the ice fishing, we'll start out with the hunting. I think we're going to do these in order of age. I think it was about 7 or 8, and my father's going to take me up hunting with him. He never goes hunting. He's got a shotgun, and he's going to go up there, and he's going to get us a deer. So he takes me with him, so we make this trip up north, and we get out there, and it's cold, and I don't like cold, but I'm all bundled up, and I'm walking through the woods, and he's not hunting from a blind, he's walking hunting, so he's kind of stalking, so you want to be able to see the deer. Well, I'm 8 or 9 years old, and I'm making all this noise with my feet. He's always turning around telling me to be quiet as I'm walking. So then I accidentally bump into a tree, and it falls over. I didn't know these trees, they're decent sized trees with this, 2-inch trunk to them. You can just knock them over. So now I'm out there as we're walking through there. I'm knocking over the ones I can knock over. He ain't gonna see a deer nowhere. So we go through this, and he's constantly telling me to be quiet, and I'm not listening at all, obviously. I mean, I remember him telling me to be quiet. I don't know why it didn't affect me, but I love knocking these trees over. So we finally find a blind. He finds a sheltered area, and we make our way in there, and we sit down, and now he's sitting there looking, and I'm sitting there, and I have my Three Musketeers. I'm eating he gets me a bag of these Three Musketeers, you know, the little fun size bars. So I'm eating my Three Musketeers, and I fall asleep. Once I get warm enough, if I get warm enough, I'm out cold. It don't matter what time of day. If I get to where I'm comfortably warm, I'm gonna go to sleep. So I got myself warm actually laying there, and I went to sleep, and I was awoke. I woke to, I think it was 3 gunshots or 2 gunshots, but he actually saw a deer and got shots away on our only day we ever hunted together. When I finally fell asleep, this is the things that he has to deal with. So that's our hunting story. Shortly after that, maybe 2 years, maybe a year or two after that, we had always gone out doing ice fishing out on Lake St. Clair, small little lake. It's very shallow, and it's got perch out there. You catch these perch, they're delicious. I love perch. So we always go out there. So this one time, I think he's taking me out to Canada. We're going to Canada to do our perch fishing, to do our ice fishing. I'm like, wow, we've never gone to Canada. So I'm 9 or 10, and I'm all bundled up again, and on the way, we got my bag of Three Musketeers fun size bars, and we get ready, we get there, we park the truck, we get all the stuff, and now we're making our way out onto the lake. Well, there's a fresh, probably, I would say 4 to 6 inches of snow out there. So there's just snow everywhere, and I'm just walking along, and all of a sudden, phew, I am walking along, and now I'm down ice level because my whole left leg is all the way down in the water. I stepped in an ice fishing hole right when we didn't even make it to the fishing hole, and to our fishing spot to set up and bust a hole and try to fish. I had already sunk my leg in there, so he had to take me back to the truck, and then he had to go back and get all his gear. So he goes back and gets the ice fishing gear, and I'm in the truck, and I'm eating my Three Musketeers. And how I would eat them at that time, I don't eat them like that anymore, but I would eat the chocolate all the way around, and then I would eat the inside part. I remember doing that in the truck when I was waiting. It was kind of cold, but he had the truck on and the heater on, so it wasn't too bad, but I was wet. And then my favorite part of that is that we stopped at some bar over in Canada, and they put I ordered some fries, and they put that vinegar on them, and I loved them. They were the hottest fries I think I've ever eaten in my life. And they were delicious, so that was a good little trip for me, not for him. Another part to that story is I was just down to my dad's. It was either the last time I was down there about a month and a half ago, or the time about 3 months ago. But it came across my mind. I was thinking about ice fishing. I turned to him and I says, why when we went fishing did we never fish for walleye? And I get the look of, I can't believe you're asking me this stupid ass question. That's the look on his face. And he says, well, I tried to, but somebody fell in a hole. So that was the time I was going to do my walleye fishing. That would have been the only time I've done it, and I screwed it up. So that's the story of that. Now we're going to go to this last story in the Keys. This one we'll go over. We're going to go out and we're going to get us some yellowtail. Now when we go out there to get the yellowtail, we go right to where William Colbert at Alligator Reef there, right in his area where he ended up being devoured by a bull shark. We fish right there for our yellowtail. Now when you get there and you start chumming the water, you get 3 layers of fish. The first top layer I think is a dark, like a blackish color fish. I don't know what they are, but you can see them all there. You look down and behind the boat, and you can see where we're got the chum bag, and you can see all the black fish. They're probably 5, 6 feet down, and then down below that you can see flashes of silver. So there's another type of fish that's a layer down below that, and then probably about 15 feet down you can see flashes of yellow, and that's what we're after. Maybe 10 or 15 feet down, but that's yellowtail, and that's what we're after. And these fish above it, we don't want nothing to do with it. So my dad's like, we're gonna do this mud balling, and I'm like, mud balling, what is that? He says, and I'm going to explain it. So he explained it to me, and we made it up. You take mud, you take a muddy type sand, and you take a bunch of oats. You can take fish scales and fish things, chop them up, you know, the guts, the remainder of the fish, the carcass, chop it up, and you can throw that in there. You just want stuff in there that's kind of something that fish will eat off of once this thing breaks open. So you put a bunch of oats, some little fish stuff, and a bunch of mud. And so we have this big 5-gallon bucket of mud. We head out there. We're in a 22-foot Mako boat, I believe it is. Nice white boat, you know, the whole back of it's white. We start fishing. And I mean, when these things, so you take a ball, you take your hand and you make a ball of mud, a decent sized ball of mud, maybe a little bit bigger than a golf ball. You take your bait and you put it in the middle and you wrap it in, you know, into the center of that. Now you take the mud ball and you just toss it in the water, and when it hits the water, that dirt and the oats, it breaks up right away. And all those fish at the top, they're eating that, and all of a sudden you get a bite right away. I mean, you get a bite right when almost 5 seconds after it hits the water, you're getting a bite. I pull it up, it's a huge yellowtail. So this thing's actually getting down past these first 2 layers. So now we're sitting there, and you know, he's gently underhanding these things in there. Now I'm putting my rod down. My hands are muddy. We're dealing with mud. So I can't even cook without making a mess. My wife hates flour and me. So I'm sitting there, and I'd take, and like I said, they would bite so fast. So I would take and I'd make my mud ball and I would chuck it overhand like I'm throwing a grenade. And I'd reach down real quick. My hands are all muddy. Reach down real quick, grab onto the rod. And by the time I had the rod there, a couple seconds later, boom, I set the hook and pull it up. About 45 minutes into our fishing, we're about halfway to our limit. I believe it is 10 fish each. So we're about 12 fish in. And we're at 45 minutes at the most. But he tells me, hey, you know, you want to be careful, and I didn't even pay attention. And I look at what he's doing, and he's got the hose. You know, you have the little hose you can rinse off the boat. The back of the boat is covered in mud. I mean, it's and it's all mine. I got mud all over the boat, and he's sitting there probably for about 15, 20 minutes squirting down clean off this boat. Then he gets back to fishing, and I'm still fishing. He's still fishing like he is. Well, I'm still fishing like I am. The overhand grenade throw grabbed the rod. The rod was so caked in mud, he had cleaned it the first time. Well, we fished another probably half hour, and we got to our 20 fish, 10 fish each, and now we have to head in. You can't catch anymore. So we're heading back in. We get back in. That boat is as dirty as it is, as muddy as it was when he cleaned it when we were out there in the water. So he's cleaning the boat off again. I go up and take a shower. I get done with my shower, and I'm waiting for him because now he's in the shower. He gets out of his shower and he says, I was just in the shower, and I step in there and I have mud running out of my hair. I threw mud all in his hair. See, you don't want to go mud balling with me. So that's my fishing stories and a little hunting story in there. That's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you join me in a couple more days for another show. But until then, if you go into that water, you are much more afraid of those sharks than they are of you.